somewhere where you have access to water.
And in my yard in particular, I have hoses in the front in the area where we can't see right now with the camera, and then I have a hose on the side of the yard. But all out here in this open space, there's no access to water. So if I was to select a site out here, like in this more larger area, I would probably consider a rain barrel out
Mm-hmm.
here. But even placing the rain barrel, some in the past I haven't had a rain barrel that's connected to any of the like drainage pipes
Right.
on a building. But best practice is to place a rain barrel where there are drainage pipes.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been fine just having the rain barrel out and the water just collecting in the rain barrel.
Same. We've done a few garden sites in the past that were not directly near a water source, and we've done rain barrels. If you don't have like a spout that comes from a roof or something like that, you can go to Home Depot or even Amazon and find these like large funnels that you can just put some netting over, so debris doesn't get inside, and it can funnel that water directly into that water source for yourself.
So we mentioned garden size as being something to consider when you are planning your garden. So typically for first-time gardeners or first-time homeowners with a lot of space like me, it could be very tempting to say like I am going to have a garden and all like a huge garden, but I've had a garden, so we didn't really give you any background on who we are. We've been this organization, we started this in 2016, but we have been gardening for about 7 or 8 years now.
As adults.
Yes. So we don't have the same sort of eagerness to say like I'm going to make every inch of this space a garden. But and we do recognize the feeling to try to utilize and maximize the most out of your growing space. So we understand, but you want to be mindful about the garden size because a lot of it really boils down to the manageability of the garden.
Yeah,
So the larger your garden, the more maintenance that it's going to require.
yes, absolutely. And like we know that everyone always wants to maximize space. Like I always do inside my home and outside my home. But like Latiana said, like if you know you're not a person who wants to spend hours a day out in your garden, maybe just watering and
Right,
going
right.
about your business, then you want to start out small. After that first garden season, you can always expand later on. But again, the whole purpose of this class today is for beginners. So if you guys have a little bit more experience, go ahead, do your thing.
Stretch yourself. Yeah, because when I my first garden, I did one garden bed, and then the next year I expanded into a second garden bed, and then I'm like, well, I have steps,
Right.
so let me put plants on the steps. So we would recommend that you consider your garden size based on your familiarity and your experience with gardening.
Yeah.
So start small and give yourself room to expand.
Another thing that I wanted to mention also is Latiana has always started out with like box garden because
Yeah.
she's had the space for it. But me, where I live and in my house, I actually started out with container gardening, and then I expanded into building garden beds. So do what you're comfortable with. Like I wasn't like too savvy when it came to like drills and saws and
Right.
stuff at that time. I am now because
Dust your shoulders off. I'm good now.
you're grown. But at that time, I really had a passion and I really wanted to grow food and herbs. But I was like, I'm not building no garden boxes. So I had a bunch of containers already. I found containers on Craigslist.
Yeah.
That's another great resource. So get
and
creative.
and that's a whole other class, container gardening, because you can use so many different types of containers to grow food. And for me, this whole process with growing food and gardening is that it's not a while it is science, it's not a perfect science.
Exactly.
Like it's all trial and error. Like so we have learned these things because we've done it. Like so we know that part of the learning is messing up. Like I have done the most learning because I have messed something up.
Completely ruined things.
Something else, some other things to consider when you're planning on the size of your garden. For me, I mentioned your available time, but then also your family size. So if you are a family of one or a family of six, that will really determine the size, meaning the amount of plants that you're gardening, because you want to make sure that you are using these plants. You are eating them, or you have people to give them away too.
Absolutely. And then again, when it comes to involving your family in it, this can be a really great family activity.
Yes.
So one thing I'll share with you all is the very first year that I started container gardening, my child wanted nothing to do with it. whatsoever. He didn't want to get dirty. He didn't want to touch soil. He didn't want to do anything.
I'm gonna watch you on the step, Mom.
Yes, he would literally watch me from the step. But guess what? That next garden season, it piqued that curiosity, and he was like, okay, I'll try it out. And then he made that connection, I grew this. Now I'm eating this and we're cooking it. It really drives all of that information home.
Right. And I'm glad that you went into the eating of it, because studies show that like when children are active in the garden, then they're more likely to try the things that they're growing because they had a hand in the entire process. So if you have challenges, we were just talking about this before we went on, but if you have challenges with your children, their eating habits, regardless of age, this is a good way to get them to expand their palate a little bit, or just, pique their curiosity.
Yes. And so we're going to get into this more later, but we always talk about growing things that you're going to eat. Yes. So you're not wasting your time and wasting your money and all of that. But as you grow along with your gardening experience, you can always expand to, fruits and vegetables and herbs that may not be totally familiar to you. You might develop a taste for them, and so your children might as well.
And another thing that impacts your garden size and your overall garden planning is considering why you are gardening. If it is just plainly a recreational activity, you might not even need to grow edible plants. Right. If you don't plan on eating these things. But if you are gardening for your health, if you are gardening within a community to build community, if you are gardening for your family, all of those things will determine the garden size and the things that you are planting within your garden.
Yes. A really good example of that. In our household, we love peppers, right?
Yes.
And peppers are one of the most expensive things at the supermarket. So as you're planning for your garden, if one of your major concerns is saving some money, that's definitely something you want to plan, keyword, to grow in your garden. Yes.
Yes. So we are going to take a slight break because we're going to change locations. And we will see you in less than a minute. Again, thank you for joining us. And one sec.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oh, yeah. Location and stuff. Yeah. And then it goes into C-star analysis. Yeah. Yes, we're good. All right, we're back.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah. So the last thing to consider when garden planning and site selection,
the location.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. Should be.
Okay.
So, the last thing we talked about, was thinking about it's really easy for your family to utilize for the space. For the space. So now we're gonna go into a little bit about the types of vegetables in our area, and that are popular. So some vegetables take a lot of room to grow. Most vegetables need at least 3 feet to be able to grow strong and healthy and to not be in competition with the surrounding vegetables or herbs. And if you want to plant rows of vegetables, then you have to make sure that you have the width capacity to do so. So again, that goes into actually drawing out a garden plan. Yeah, that makes sense. So what Latiana and I have done in the past is literally we just get a sketch pad. We do a visual assessment of the space that we have, and then we go into building garden beds not literally, but on our, yes, on our visual.
So graphic them out. Yeah. So sometimes we'll use that. If you have actually graph paper is perfect.
That works really well for actual measurements.
Right, exactly. The next thing that you want to consider, so we have thought about why we're planting. We have thought about where in the garden we are going to grow things, so site selection. Now we want to think about what it is that you're going to grow and how certain things impact your decision on what to grow.
So when you are assessing what you want to grow, again, the biggest factor is going to be the amount of space that you have. Whether you're growing from seed or whether you're starting seeds indoors, you can access your seed packet to actually find out how much space is going to be needed once that plant reaches maturity. So one of the cool things that you can do is actually, I think we have a visual. I want to show this really quickly.
Let's do it later. It's in the slideshow.
Oh, it's in the slideshow. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So again, this is going to go back into personal preference, right? So when your family gets together for dinner, you kind of know what your kids like or what your husband likes or what you like. And when you're planning your garden, you just want to make sure that those are the things that you're planning to plant.
Yes. So Amia talked about thinking about how much space that you have available. So some of the things to consider, and she mentioned the seed packet, and we'll actually show a seed packet at the end, is how these vegetables will grow. So you might love watermelons, you might love cantaloupe, but if you have a very small space, then they might not be the best fruits or vegetables to grow. So we want to share an example of some watermelons that I have grown. So I've tried to grow watermelons at least 3 times. And the last 2 years, I've been really successful. So you'll see that in this first slide, I started the watermelon inside the raised bed. And I thought I was sad. Well, I did much better last year because I didn't grow much in that raised bed with the watermelon. And we're talking about watermelon because they are a vining vegetable, like how cucumbers are, fruit, like how cantaloupe are. So they grow out. So in this next slide, you'll see that the vines have matured and they have grown out of the garden bed, out of the raised garden bed. And then they continue to grow. So if you are someone who likes your space to be nice and neat, this isn't for you. Because as you'll see on this last slide, the watermelon, I had a watermelon patch in my front yard. The watermelon vines continue to grow and grow and grow. And I produced a lot of watermelon. I was successful, but I know that is not for everyone. For example, my mother hated it. She loved that I had watermelon, but every time she came over, you have a forest up here. So size and how much you have is how much space that you have is really important. So another thing, so I kind of hinted at this with the watermelon, which helps you decide on what you grow, is the expected production from your crop. So the smaller the garden, the more important it is for you to maximize your space and think about like how much production you are going to have from each crop. If you don't place your plants in the right place, if they're crowded, if they don't have enough sun or water, or all these different things that are impactful to help plants grow the most fruitful, that will really impact how much each of these plants produce. So, and then also thinking about how long it takes for these plants to grow. So right now we are all planting early, right? This is the first day of spring, it's March. So we are giving ourselves enough time for any plants that we decide to grow to mature. Right. There are some plants that are faster maturing, like tomatoes, like beans. And then there are others that take a longer time to mature, like watermelons. Watermelons will take the entire garden season. Some watermelons will take 90 to 120 days to grow. So that's something else that you can find on the back of the seed packet. As we mentioned, we'll show you these seed packets at the end because a lot of the questions that people ask us, we end up saying all the information is on the seed packet.
So another thing you want to consider when you're planning on what to grow is, and we hit on this a little bit earlier, is the cost of vegetables if you purchase them, right? Like not if you grow them, but if you purchase them. So some things that are very expensive at the supermarket, you're notice we already talked about sweet peppers, like, your orange peppers, your red peppers.
Especially the colorful peppers. Anything that's not green, like, it's double the price, and it blows my mind.
Exactly. Because they're beautiful and they're vibrant, but these are very easy to grow at home. In fact, I've grown them out of a tire before, and this was actually before I realized that, chemicals can kind of leak out from tires, so don't grow vegetables in tires. You can do flowers, things like that, but if you're going to eat it, don't grow it out.
And if you do, because I will know that some kind of like questionable things, you want to line it with something that won't leach as many chemicals into your food. And the amount of, because some people believe, and like the amount of chemicals that leach into it is still safer than what we might get in the market.
That's a very good point. And then we haven't even discussed it being organic.
Right.
Obviously, you have the chemicals you down the line.
Best practices, you don't really want to go into, you don't start with the tires with your edible plants. If you have other choices, choose that.
So again, going with the food value of vegetables. Broccoli is another vegetable that tends to be pretty expensive, even though that kind of grows better in cooler times.
Yes.
It's just something to consider when you're planting your garden. So our small vegetable garden options is something that's close to my heart because I don't have nearly as much space as Latiana has. So I have to really make sure that I'm growing things that don't, like watermelon, they're not going to branch out all over and overtake everything unless that's the only thing I want to grow.
And I will note that prior to me being in this new space, I lived, I had what was it, 12 by, I don't know. You saw the yard and the pictures of the watermelon. So we had a similar setup in the front of our yards, but Pamia had significantly less space because she has a huge, beautiful tree in front of her house. So her garden space was different. Right. So we had like the equal amount of yard, but she couldn't grow in all of her yard.
Not at all. I have like this oak tree in front of my house, and a good point is that weeds won't even grow around it. So I already knew at that point that it was too much shade and that the soil probably would be depleted because the tree is going to take all the nutrients from everything around it, which is why I started with container gardening. But we're going to show you guys a slide right now that may be able to help you if you're like me and you have a limited amount of garden space. Okay, slide is up. So you guys can see that the suggested vegetables for a smaller garden space include things like bush beans, you have radishes. I've actually grown radishes in a tote before.
Like a storage tote.
Like a storage tote. Yes. I just took the lid off. I drilled some holes in the bottom of it. I placed it on some cement, and it drained well. And I grew radishes out of that.
And that's what we're saying. You can grow really in any type of container as long as it has some depth. And actually considering what the depth need is for your plants is important when you're selecting containers if you choose the container garden.
Yes. And then even when you select the containers, you have to make sure the soil that you put in there is matching up with that level as well. So again, we have bush beans, tomato, eggplant, onions, there's so many different things that you can still grow well, even if you have limited space. So I know a lot of our participants may not have backyard, front yard space where you can place some containers or even do some window gardening.
Yeah, so don't let your space deter you because you can always make space to feed yourself.
Yes.
Location. Yep. Okay, perfect. So when you are thinking about where you are placing your plants in your garden, you have to have some knowledge on how those plants grow. And we've mentioned that when you're choosing your site for your garden, you want to think about where the sun is and location and proximity to your garden. And now the sun comes back into place when you are selecting where the plants are growing in your garden, because some plants grow tall, some are shorter, some grow wide, and the tall plants are going to create shade. Mm-hmm. So think about and learn and research how these plants grow so you can determine where you're going to place these fruits and vegetables inside your garden.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just want to say a really good thing to do, and it takes like not a lot of like research, is to just visit a local nursery or like garden place. So in my area, we have Albury Arboretum, which has garden plots that are available, to the local community.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I knew nothing about gardening whatsoever, I could make a visit to that site and just check out how other people are planting. And you would see that they place their radishes in front of their corn or in front of their beans so that those won't overshadow the light that's needed for the radishes to grow.
And you'll notice that on the list of plants that you can garden in small spaces, we were particular about the type of bean. Mm-hmm. So we said bush beans because there are typically like two types of beans, pole beans and bush beans. Mm-hmm. And pole beans, they trellis.
Yes.
And they grow up. And Camilla has a story about some pole beans at her house. And I think this is before you realize that there were two types of beans, right?
I didn't even know at that point. I just bought some beans like in a packet from the store, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna grow some beans. So basically, what ended up happening was my beans grew all the way up the side of my house. They grew up a electricity line. I had cucumbers that grew up an electricity line. So sometimes you have to be careful with vining plants.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like pole beans or cucumbers or something of that nature.
And we do have some vining plants on this list that you see right now. And one easy plant to grow that actually grows enormous, vigorous vines are tomatoes. So we're never going to tell you don't grow tomatoes, but tomato vines can grow 20, 25 feet. And the way to manage that is literally to maintain your garden. You can prune these things. So a lot of the vining plants, like all of you can grow them in a small garden, is because you are able to manage them. And it doesn't necessarily impact how much they grow. You're managing the size of them. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is seed starting. So you see Tamia's face, this is dear to her heart.
It's my favorite.
Yes. So we have thought about why we're gardening. You have selected the best site for your garden. You have thought about which you're going to plant. And now this is the time when you are getting into it, okay? You're ready to plant or start your seeds.
Exactly. So you kind of have two options when it comes to starting from seed. You can choose to literally start from your seed and place those seeds directly in the ground or in your garden bed, or you can start your seeds indoors. So typically in our region, you would tend to start them about 6 or even up to 8 weeks before the actual garden season starts. Right. So about now. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to have those plants be mature enough to be able to go in the ground when it's warm enough, right? So if you were to wait until it was warm enough and start them inside, they wouldn't even be strong enough to grow in the ground because they wouldn't be acclimated to like the wind and the temperatures and things of that nature. So if you actually start your seeds indoors, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Latiana and I always like to encourage people to practice reduce, reuse, recycle. So in the past, we've used, styrofoam cups. We've used eggshells, egg cartons.
You can even use toilet paper roll holders.
Toilet paper roll.
The cardboard.
Yeah, you can put them in a shoebox and just stack them up against each other. And there, the possibilities are endless in which you can start seeds in.
Anything that you can put a drainage hole in,
yes,
you can start your seeds in that.
I personally like to do it with stuff that's biodegradable because you technically don't have to take them out of that medium before you put them in the ground.
So although we've used styrofoam cups and we have photos of a seed starting at different classes. Mm-hmm. So although we've used styrofoam cups, that's not what we recommend. That was like readily available because our partner at the time, they said, we have so many styrofoam cups. And we're like, okay, well, we can do that. we don't want you to throw them in the trash.
Right. But that wouldn't be something we would then place into the ground.
Exactly.
Right, because it's made from chemicals. But for the beginners, especially for anyone who's in tune with us right now, who's never done any kind of gardening, I would suggest buying a seed tray. And I like these seed trays because they come with like a greenhouse. There's like a little lid that's plastic that goes over the top of them. And they have these little spaces and they come with potting soil. And it's already set up. You really don't have to do anything but put some warm water in there. You give it a few minutes, those seed pods will puff up, and then you can plant your seeds, and the depth, again, will be based on what you're planting. So this is a point where you would reference that seed packet again.
So as you'll see in this photo, there are styrofoam cups that we started. So this is our reduce, reuse, recycle. And then we also have those seed trays. And We like to, although we like to save money as much as possible, we actually prefer the seed trays because they come with the soil, they come with the greenhouse, and they're easy to use. So if you're also considering like ease of use, seed trays are a good option, and they're not that expensive, especially considering how much you can grow in these seed trays.
They're usually like 72.
Right.
So that's 72 seeds that you can start. And again, they're very easy to place in a window or on a table where they get sunlight. And they're kind of, they're covered. So like if you have a cat or a dog, you know, you're less likely to mess with them, or even a small child.
And you'll see in the next slide that the maturing plants in the seed tray. So we also use, with our work with West Oak Lane Library, we bought greenhouses, indoor greenhouses. So although the seed trays have their own greenhouse, as they mature, you actually take the top off the seed trays. And then now indoors, you created a whole new environment for these seeds, for these plants at this point to mature.
So now we're going to go into direct sow, outdoor planting. I have not done direct sow before the last 2 years. And the reason was because I was just kind of scared. I was just like, you know, it's one of those things where you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So as you guys do the indoor seed starting and you get that under your belt, you'll kind of realize that even that's not definite. So you're going to plant seeds sometimes that never grow, and there may be no rhyme or reason to it. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, whether they fertilize properly or not. And that's not really up to us. It's like up to the universe, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the same thing when you're starting direct sow outside. Sometimes in the past, I've sown a little bit more seeds, so I feel like maybe I have a better chance, and most of them are maturing. But that's something that you wait until it's to do. So again, if you want to preemptively save a little bit of money and save a little bit of time, you can start your seeds indoors. But if you want to wait until the last frost date of your season, which in our area tends to be around like the 2nd or 3rd week of April, and then the frost comes back around November. So you have between that time frame to do some direct sowing.
To do some outdoor planting. But be mindful that all plants aren't made to be started indoors.
Right.
Some plants actually are better to be direct sown because of how those plants grow. So most root vegetables, you're going to directly sow those into the ground. You're not going to start those seeds early. Plants like corn, because the depth of the roots needed to nurture that plant, those are other plants that you want to direct sow regardless of like when you start. But sometimes you don't feel pressure to start from seed. Pamita is passionate about starting from seed. That's what she enjoys doing, but everybody doesn't want to start from seed. It could be because of fear, it could be because of caution, or you just may not want to do it because you don't have the time. So you can do your outdoor gardening by going to a local nursery, going to one of the big box stores and grabbing those plants, and you can start your outdoor process after the first frost. Did you plant watermelon from seeds or baby plant? A baby plant. I planted it from seedlings. So I bought the seedling from like Lowe's or somewhere. Actually, I probably got it from a nursery. I've been like really feeling local nurseries the last few years. But I don't hate the plants from Home Depot or Lowe's or anything because
they're usually pretty strong.
Yeah, they're good. And because a lot of them source them from larger local nurseries. Yeah. But something to consider. So maybe you don't know the last frost date. It could be an easy Google search for you. But in our area, and most of the Northeast and around the country, people tend to start their outdoor gardens right after Mother's Day. So at that point, the air is warm enough and the ground is warm enough to be able to support the healthy growth of plants. Mm-hmm. So Google is always your friend. We are a wealth of knowledge, but like those very particular things, and Pamita, I think she mentioned our growing zone. Mm-hmm. So here in the greater Philadelphia area, our growing zone is 7, but then there's like a 7A, a 7B. Right. So check out your growing zone, because we do know that we have people that are tuning in from all over the country, and you may even be international that are here with us today, because we have people join us internationally. So check out the growing zone in your area, and that will help determine when you start planting or when you should start starting your seeds inside. actually right now, like down south, like they may start planting outside because it's been warm for a while now. So your location really impacts how you garden.
And another thing to consider also is that these zones aren't steadfast. So we mentioned earlier when we were outdoors that, the earth is in a transitional period right now. Is that what we're going to call it? Yeah. It's also called global warming. So, things are going to fluctuate. It's possible that, April 20th, the ground may still be frozen. Who knows? Right. Or it may be so warm that you can plant everything you've ever dreamed of. You kind of got to, play it by ear. We're living in a weird time.
And what we're talking about today, and we could have started with this, but we just got talking about seed saving. We're talking about outdoor planting, and I mentioned the big box stores. You can go to Home Depot and Lowe's and whatever your big box store is in your area right now, and the nurseries, and you will see plants. Those plants are not necessarily the same plants that you were growing in your summer garden. We're talking about starting your outdoor summer garden. What you see right now are the leafy greens and other cool weather vegetables. So these would be vegetables that you would grow in the spring or in the fall that are naturally prepared to be able to handle this fluctuation in temperature, cooler ground, cooler air. So you can garden. You can, depending on where you live, you can garden all year round. Right. But you can garden in these off times in the spring and fall. But we are not talking about that. Like with all of this, when we're talking about know your last frost and all of that, we're thinking tomatoes. Right. We're thinking cucumbers and all those warm weather fruits and vegetables for your summer garden.
Absolutely. Because like right now I was just at home today and got like dark leafy greens and stuff like that. And absolutely, this could still be a good time to purchase those and put them in the ground.
I just bought some spinach.
Right.
I bought spinach and broccoli a week ago, and I put them in the ground like in a little corner because we are not confession. We don't do a whole lot of cold weather planting. We don't really care for the cold weather so much.
Summer baby.
Yes, I'm a spring baby. So when I went to the nursery and I saw the spinach, I said, you know what? I'm gonna just grab it. Let's see how this goes. Every other year or so, I'm like, let me see how this goes. So I'll report back and let you know if I nurtured my spinach and broccoli well enough.
So I'll just tell y'all real quick before we move on. One of my first times experimenting with like the cold weather stuff was in a school garden at Global Leadership Academy, and we were running a garden program there, and the children wanted to plant collard greens.
Okay.
And this was around like January, February, and we made like a Black History Month dish with the collard greens, and it worked out really well. But then when the kids got so excited about, oh, we want to grow them again, I said, well, you guys know these are cold water vegetables. So when we planted them, they actually grew really well all the way up until maybe like May or June.
Okay.
But the issue was those are plants that tend to get a little bitter the warmer it gets. So you're going to have a plant that looks great, but the taste is going to be much different because it thrives in that cooler weather, and you're going to get it's going to taste better.
And then some cool weather vegetables, if you push them and you try to go grow them in the warmer weather, they do what is called bolting because they're going to grow through their entire life cycle. Mm-hmm. So they're done producing. They're done producing the leaves that you want to eat and all of that. And they said, okay, I'm going to flower. And so now you have all of these vegetables and you're like, I don't even eat this part of the vegetable. So
that's, sorry to cut you off, but that's why they were bitter. So a lot of plants, especially the dark leafy green ones, after they bolted, it's going to be bitter right off the bat. And when I was a kid, I always used to think like, how do dark leafy greens grow? Seeds, I can make the connection, right? But that's when the seeds come for leafy veggies in the bolting cycle.
All right, we are almost done, but you wanted to mention one more thing, right?
Yes. So we wanted to talk a little bit about which vegetables and herbs and fruits grow well in our area. And so we found through Penn State Extension, their master gardening guide. And we're going to show you guys that visual.
No, we don't have it. You never seen it.
No?
Mm-mm.
I apologize. We have the visual.
Okay.
Well, we talk about it. That's something that you can very easily access. So I'm just going to tell y'all real quick. like maybe 70 or 80 years ago, right? The United States government decided that there was all this land that obviously originally, was supposed to go to indigenous people, and universities like Penn State or, all the state universities kind of gathered up that land. What the government decided to do was, okay, now you guys are responsible for kind of like educating the community.
Right.
So that's where you get these extension campuses kind of coming into play when it comes to just teaching the community how to, effectively garden.
So like 4-H programs are connected to these extension programs.
Yes, exactly. So if you guys are to visit the website of whatever state you live in, for us here in Philadelphia, it would be Penn State Extension. They actually have a Master Gardeners, an entire program that if you're really interested, you can join. Throughout coronavirus, it was put on hold because I was enrolled, and I'm so sad. But check that out online, and it'll give you some more insight into exactly what works really well for our region.
And another, you hear us saying that you can look online. So there is a wealth of research a wealth of information online. But a book that I refer to a lot is this Mid-Atlantic Fruit and Vegetable Gardening. So where we are in this region is the Mid-Atlantic, or the Northeast, but the Mid-Atlantic includes Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and I believe New Jersey. So in this book, and we will include the name of it in the chat, in this book you will find fruits and vegetables that grow really well in our region.
And the last thing we wanted to talk about was everyone, I'm pretty sure, is on your mind, like, okay, we did this, we did that. Like, when can we finally, reap the benefits of all this hard work that we're going to put in? And again, so this is going to be based on that original plan that you make and how long it takes to grow, what your expectations should be. So most of the things we talked about are going to mature before or up to 70 days, but you do have some fruits, vegetables, some fruits and vegetables that take up to 120 days to mature.
Like watermelon.
Right. And those are usually the bigger things.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
They take more time, but it's definitely worth it, right? Watermelon is delicious. Name of Penn State program. The Master Gardeners program is something that I'm hoping in 2021. I have to check that to see. Going to resurface it, but if that's something you're interested in, definitely check that out as soon as possible.
And if you look up online Penn State Extension, you'll be able to see they have so much information on gardening, and not just edible gardening. They have it for ornamental gardening as well. It's a very, very knowledge-rich site.
And Penn State has been really instrumental in battling that whole spotted lanternfly thing. So when you go on the website, that's going to be like everything you see. You'll have to,
Yeah, so depending on where you live, you may have a very intimate relationship with spotted lanternflies.
They're coming back. They're back already. So you're right.
Yeah, I'm curious of how it is over here on this side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking forward to them. So we are at the end of our class. And we are going to open it up for questions. And we can actually, if you want to, you can ask your question. You can take yourself off mute if there are questions that have not been asked yet in the chat. Do we have one more? Okay. Can I bring my houseplants outside in the morning and bring them inside at night?
So absolutely you can. Latiana and I are both probably going to take a stab at answering this question. I've done that in the past, and I feel like it's a great thing to do to give your plant some direct sunlight for plant species that require direct sunlight and do well in direct sunlight. But one thing I will caution with is bringing pests back indoors. So I've had like mealy bugs come back in. I've had what are those little white things? I can't remember, like different types of larvae that's come back in on plants.
Those little white bugs.
Yeah, they're on the tip of my tongue.
It begins with the M too, I think. But they can ravage,
and they transfer very easily from plant to plant if you're touching your plants a lot and cleaning them or spraying them. So while I'm not advising, not against doing it totally, you just have to be aware of that.
And this is actually directly related to the plants that can grow in our area. So a lot of these house plants that we have are tropical plants. And that means that they have been bred or they are naturally not to our area.
Right.
So that's why some people might consider taking your plants in and out the house during the warmer months, because you will notice that your plants will flourish in the humid and warm temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
But I would even caution as it warms, like don't take them in and out every day, because if you want them to take advantage of the warm weather, you want them to get acclimated with that weather. So if you choose to take your house plants outdoors during the warmer months, spring and summer, leave them out there. Leave them out there for the full season, so they are used to it. And honestly, and it helps with your own energy. That just feels like a lot, taking your stuff in and out every day.
It is, but like what Latiana said, with acclimation, you also have to consider that you don't want to just start acclimating like one day, because you will shock the holy crap out of your plant.
And that's what you do with seeds too.
Yeah,
like with starting your edible seeds. With the seed starting, like you are slowly but surely getting these plants used to a new environment.
So you want what I would do is I would start with maybe 4 hours a day, and then increase into 6 hours, then 8 hours, because that plant is slowly going to build up a tolerance for those lower temperatures as the night comes in. Another thing that I noticed too, though, is that depending on where you are, some of our outdoor friends, like raccoons and squirrels and cats, they're like, oh, here's a tropical plant, we're going to destroy it. So if you have like an enclosed patio, like Latiana does, that's the perfect place for it. But if you don't, just consider the pests, I don't want to say pests, animals that you have in your area,
right,
that can be pest-like.
Oh, that's my favorite. How do you get soil ready if you have a raised garden bed? So I amend my soil every year. And this most simple way to amend your raised garden bed soil is to add compost. Mm-hmm. So I actually add new soil every year, but depending on how much soil is in your bed, because I guess I have a, wait, we wrote it. Because I'm like, I add it every year. Mm-hmm. So my bed never really went too high, but I add both new soil and definitely compost every year. So you're reintroducing nutrients into your soil. So that's the simplest way. And we didn't talk about it today at all, but me and I have had a conversation about how I winter over my gardens. Mm-hmm. So I am careful and deliberate about closing out my garden for the winter every year. And that looks like, depending on what type of gardener you are, that could look like pulling out all the roots from your plants, cutting them down, and definitely covering your soil, because some pests animals are cats, and they like to use your as litter boxes. Mm-hmm. So one way to prevent that, and that's only one of the benefits of covering your garden bed, but one way to prevent that is to cover your garden bed with like a tarp or something. But I've also noticed that covering my garden bed with like that plastic, because that's technically what tarp is, it helps to protect the soil and keep it warm, and it's protection for your garden bed.
And I wanted to mention also, going back to that soil question, specifically for people who are beginners, because this isn't something that I knew right off the rip, you want to get garden soil versus potting soil, because there are different types of soil. So there's raised bed garden soil. So just read the package. Read the bag. The porosity is going to be a little different, and you want to make sure you get the best type of soil for what you're doing. And typically, potting soil is more for indoor, and garden soil is more for outdoor.
Yes. So before we answer these last questions, and thank you all for sending them in, let's look at, because you will hear us keep saying about like reading, the importance of reading the things, whether you're reading the soil bag or reading the seed packet. So on the back of the seed packet, it literally tells you everything that you need to know to ensure that, and maybe not ensure, everything that you need to know to grow this vegetable or fruit well. Mm-hmm. So it will have the direct sow date. So when it is, if you're going to directly sow these seeds, when you should put them in the ground. Right. It will tell you where these vegetables or fruit grow best. The soil packet will also tell you the depth that you should plant the seed, and it tells you the how far these seeds should be away from each other. Like there is all the questions that you have about a plant will be on the back of the seed packet. It could even, and you won't find all this information when you buy the seedlings from Home Depot or Lowe's or anything.
You might just get like information about sunlight and that's it.
Right. So the seed packets definitely are a wealth of information. Thank you. So let's look at these last questions. Yeah.
I think I saw something about something about compost.
So is organic soil good? And if so, where can you purchase? Is it expensive?
I don't think it's like extremely expensive, but again, it depends on how much you're purchasing and how large, you're planning to make your garden. Me personally, I love compost. Like, I juice a lot, so I always have a lot of like roughage left over, like on a daily or weekly basis that I can add to my outdoor like compost post. We also use eggshells. You want to kind of steer away from using things that are like protein based, like meat or manure on your own, just because they can introduce disease into the soil, and that's something that's really hard to recover from, especially when you're doing in-ground planting.
Yeah, so if you don't want to spend the extra for organic soil, I brought up compost because you can amend your soil with compost, and that will help to introduce those same benefits that you'll find in a pre-made organic soil.
Yes.
Another question. Do you have suggestions for protecting gardens from pests? I will have to garden in a garden bed on my deck, and I've seen squirrels around, and I will need to protect against animals. Camilla knows all about the squirrels. I never had a squirrel problem.
I live in West Oak Lane. I don't know if any of you do, and the squirrels are horrendous. They have ripped up all my root vegetables before in the past. So I did two things. First thing, I befriended my neighborhood cats. I started to feed them. I would leave out little bowls. And the squirrels really tend not to come around places that cats are, because the cats in my area eat squirrels. Like, they are feral. They will eat squirrels. So,
now that I hadn't heard of. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not even getting to what I've seen. But outside of that, if you're not a cat person, or you just you may have allergies or whatnot, chicken wire.
And I was going to say, cats bring their own protection. They require their own protection.
Yeah, and they bring some issues on their own. So outside of that, you can invest in chicken wire. So I've had very good experience with chicken wire. And what you can do is kind of a dome chicken wire over top of a bed or an in-ground area. I've even done chicken wire around pots, which worked really well. I did like a kind of like a circular chicken wire pattern that I tied together with zip ties, and then just put another piece of chicken wire on top.
Yeah, you know what? And I don't have the picture, but I'll post it. I think I might post it on Instagram. I'll show you. There is a homeowner that we'll be working with that has an example of some chicken wire in this dome that Camilla is talking about.
And that's relatively cheap, and it's easy to work with. You just need to purchase some wire cutters.
Yeah.
And then you can.
And I use bird netting. I've draped for, not for squirrels, but for cats. I've like draped bird netting over my newly planted garden bed. So we're going to get to these last questions, but I do want to note that we recognize that we have 1 minute left. So we have 0 minutes left. So we'll answer these last questions, and then we will, bid you adieu into your Saturday.
That one. I usually keep my herbs in the house. How do you have any faves that you have done outside? Any you like better outside versus inside that you've had good luck with? Yes. So spearmint and peppermint grows amazing. Cilantro and parsley grow amazing indoors and outdoors.
Okay, I was there. You saying okay?
And also sage. So those have been my favorites, and I feel like they've been the easiest to grow and to also manage, because peppermint, any kind of mint, can grow crazy. And the beauty of it is that it's going to come back every year, and you don't have to replant it. So that's my personal favorite
for the outdoor. Yeah, I have outdoor herbs. I have mint and oregano that have been coming back in my garden for about 5 years now. And I always know when it's spring because it comes back. Yes. Yeah. And growing those, so like Camilla said, like mint can grow like a weed. So if you grow those in containers, it'll help to contain the growth of these plants.
Absolutely.
There was a few questions in that one.
Oh, yeah.
So any better outside or inside? Not really. Herbs are really well suited to grow indoors and outdoors, but just be mindful that they'll produce more outside because plants grow outside and more space. But you can grow herbs in particular. They're pretty well suited for sunny windows inside and growing outdoors. Where's a place you trust to buy your seeds?
So that's kind of like a loaded question. I love heirloom seeds, and I love to support, like we mentioned, like small local farms. And we also love to seed save.
Yeah.
So wherever you personally decide to start, and then of course Home Depot and Lowe's, they're going to have everything that you need, and they're going to have it in different varieties. Like you're going to have organic, you're going to have heirloom, and you're going to have conventional. So based on how much money you want to spend, and if organic is a major issue for you and your family, you guys can make personal decisions when it comes to that. I've ordered seeds off of Lime before that have done very well, and I only had to order them one time because this is something for another class, but you can always save your seeds from plants that do very well, or you thought they were very delicious. We've done it with cucumbers, tomato, melons,
Peppers.
Especially peppers.
I save a lot of peppers.
I think we have some videos on our Instagram that can help with that also.
So we do know that there are a lot of places, even in Philadelphia, you can buy seeds locally, y'all. And there's this one business that I've been really impressed with called True Love Seeds, and they're connected to Sankofa Farm in Southwest Philadelphia. And what I really like about Sankofa Seeds is they are intentional about having seeds available that are culturally connected. So they have seeds for you that are indigenous to Africa and African cuisine and African cultures. And they even have, I think, like different Middle Eastern seeds. And then they have seeds that are native to our area, so indigenous to Pennsylvania. So True Love Seeds, I have been impressed with the variety of seeds that they have available. So I would say, since you're interested, then to look at True Love Seeds. And I don't have any more of the questions. There are probably more, but I know that like we're past our time.
Yeah. But before we go, we wanted to mention,
yes.
I don't know if you guys have noticed these amazing hoodies that we have on. So we're promoting these. They're available through our website eventually, right? No, the hoodies are, okay. Yeah. So the hoodies are up for purchase if you guys like them. We feel like it's the perfect time of year when you're doing outdoor garden stuff, even though it's getting warmer. It can be pretty chilly in the mornings. So we'll have these.
We were rethinking this outside scene, y'all.
I know.
We went outside, it's all 28 degrees. I was like, oh,
it was freezing this morning, but it warmed up.
Safe spring.
And thank you guys for rocking out with this.
Yes. So follow us online on Facebook and Instagram, Black Girls with Green Thumbs. And thank you for joining us this Saturday morning. See you all next month. So Green Thumbs at Home is the third Saturday of every month. And next month we're doing plant-based cooking.
Yes, we're back to
cooking.
And just so you guys know, we're actually going to be doing Caesar salad from scratch. So that's going to be fun. We're going to be making our own plant-based Caesar salad dressing. So no dairy involved for people that have issues or just don't like it. And we're going to be making the salad fresh. So join us.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye, guys.